Then on Sports Central, we go for our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Texas Tech Red Raiders, a team that went 8-5 overall in the 2022 season. This was a good team last season that definitely shows a tremendous amount of potential. Looking forward to 2023. How will this team be in 2023, and could this team potentially be a dark horse contender in the 2023 season? Is what we'll be talking about here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predict their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. Once again, the record was 8-5. And this was a team that really flew under the radar for the majority of the season. I mean, you consider the first two games, two nice wins over Murray State, and then Houston beat Houston in overtime. It was a good team last season. But then lost to NC State on the road, 27-14. Came back and beat Texas, 37-34 in overtime. That was an impressive win. But then went to K-State, went to Oklahoma State, lost both games by right around 10 points. So this team was 3-3 heading into the bye, really not considered a big contender. I mean, they also took a couple of losses down the stretch against Baylor and TCU. They got blown out to Baylor, in fact, 45-17. But we saw some potential when they took on West Virginia, beat them 48-10. I mean, that was quite a turnaround there, losing to Baylor the next week after a nice win like that and getting destroyed by Baylor for that matter. But down the stretch, this team really played well. They beat Kansas 43-28, a good team last season. Beat Iowa State on the road 14-10, beat Oklahoma at home in overtime 51-48. What a game that was. I mean, so really strong finish, and you consider the Texas Bowl when they took on Ole Miss, beat them 42-25. I mean, they won that game in convincing fashion. That really showed, I think, how far this team came over the course of the year and finished out the season 8-5. Once again, this was a team that definitely flew under the radar. We really didn't know and didn't realize that this was actually a pretty good team last season until the very end when they beat Ole Miss in convincing fashion. So not a bad season for this team, but looking forward to 2023. Let's look at the roster preview heading into the season. And this team will look different offensively. The quarterback situation is going to be a bit different. We saw Donovan Smith start for the majority of the first half of the season, and he was, in the end, the top quarterback statistically for this team. But it was a pretty even split between the top three in Donovan Smith, Tyler Shuck, and Baron Morin. All three quarterbacks were over 1,100 yards, and Donovan Smith was the top with 1,500, along with 12 touchdowns, 8 picks. And Donovan Smith is gone, so he is not on this team anymore. And now it's down to Tyler Shuck and Baron Morin. I'd assume that Tyler Shuck is going to be the primary starter for the majority of the season coming up here if he plays well enough, which I definitely think he can. And we saw him also start for the majority of the second half of the season, which if you consider the second half and the way this team played down the stretch, their best part of the season was in the second half. So I think that kind of gives the green light to Tyler Shuck to be the primary starter for this team moving forward into 2023. Backfield looks pretty good. Taj Brooks coming back, who put up nearly 900 yards last season, 8 touchdowns, good season for him. You do lose to Roderick Thompson, who put up just over 800 yards as well, 8 touchdowns. Both running backs really had similar stats last year. So you do lose one in the backfield, but at least you got Taj Brooks coming back, which is good. And I'd expect him to improve looking forward to 2023. The receiving core, though, looks great. You're going to have a lot of experience in the receiving core this season. Jaron Bradley coming back. Miles Price coming back. Xavier White also coming back, the third wideout for this team. Fuwanji's also coming back. So a lot of potential in this receiving core. The quarterback situation, if Tyler Shuck or Baron Morin can step up, have a great season. I mean, Tyler Shuck and Baron Morin both split time last season, had similar stats, but I mean, none of these three quarterbacks were a big standout last season. That was definitely a factor as to what limited this team's ceiling offensively. We didn't see a huge standout out of the quarterback situation. So looking forward to 2023, if Tyler Shuck or even Baron Morin can step up, have a great season, be the primary starter, I think that can go a long way for this team, especially if they can prevent injuries. But you lose one on the offensive line, 2 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and then 2 in the secondary. Defensively, this team will need to rebuild a bit. There are multiple key players from last season defensively that will be gone. So that is, I'd say, the main concern for this team for me is the defense. Can this team reload after losing, especially, I'd say, 5 of their key players defensively from last season? And you could mention Merriweather, you could mention Eldridge, Wilson, Waters, Pearson Jr. So all 5 of them all gone for next season. That is going to be a bit of a concern. But Can this team be a true dark horse in 2023? There's the potential here. You look at how this team finished last season. That's definitely something you look at when trying to predict how a team's going to be the next season. How did they finish the prior season? Did they improve or did they decline? This is a team that definitely improved over the course of 2022, and that does give promise looking forward to 2023. And this team definitely could be a dark horse with the talent that they have. But looking at your transfer portal and recruiting now, Donovan Smith is off to Houston, which Houston now being in the Big 12, that is definitely something that is something that's interesting moving forward. And Texas Tech does play Houston this season. The game is in Lubbock, but it is to finish out September there in week 5. So that's definitely a game that should be circled there, as I really have no doubt he's going to be the primary starter for Houston. DeAndre McCray, receiver, is coming in from Austin Peay. You got him coming in. Expect him to have an immediate impact. Trey Cleveland is off to North Texas. I believe he was the 5th wideout for this team last season. And then you got Rusty Stats coming in, offensive tackle from Western Kentucky. You also bring in Steve Linton from Syracuse, edge rusher. You lose Philip Bliddy, who is off to Indiana. CJ Baskerville, safety, is coming in from San Diego State. And Reggie Pearson Jr. is off to Oklahoma. Recruiting-wise, you're 20th in the country, 4th in the Big 12. This is a strong recruiting class coming in here for Texas Tech. You got 5 4-stars coming in, 21 3-stars. The future is bright recruiting-wise, and even the transfer portal hasn't been terribly active for this team, but for the most part, you have brought in multiple players that could have immediate impacts for this team here in 2023. So on the future forecast meter, got this team at an 8 out of 10. I think the future is bright. This is a team that is heading in the right direction, I do believe. I mean, you consider how much they improved last season under a first-year head coach, Joey McGuire. I mean, I think the future looks good for this team, and I mean, the last couple of years, this team has made it to bowl games, but I mean, the past decade or so, this has just been definitely a bottom half team in the Big 12. So we'll see if this team can take that next step. But with that, it's time to take a look at the schedule now as we look forward to 2023. So you got Wyoming on the road in week 1, so a road matchup against a group of 5 team to kick off the season. Then Oregon comes to town in week 2. This is going to be an interesting matchup with the storyline of Tyler Shough. Obviously, it's been a while since he was at Oregon now, but Tyler Shough was at Oregon once upon a time. That was between 2019 and 2020, where he was with the Ducks, and this is his 3rd season coming up here with Texas Tech. So he is still facing his former team. It's definitely something that's interesting. Looking forward to that matchup. Plus, for one, you got him at home, and for 2, Oregon is going to be a good team next season. This is a nice opportunity for Texas Tech to definitely catch some attention, because I mean, Oregon's going to be a team that I could see in the top 15 for the majority of next season. Really talented team offensively. They're going to be tough offensively, so this defense will need to come to play for that one. But it's definitely a huge opportunity there. Then you got Tarleton State at home the next week. West Virginia on the road to kick off the conference schedule. Houston at home after that. That's also a big game, facing off against a former quarterback in Donovan Smith. Then Baylor on the road, K-State at home, BYU on the road. Then you got your bye week, and then TCU at home on a Thursday night. Kansas on the road, UCF at home, and then Texas on the road to finish out the regular season. So you are facing multiple of the Big 12 newcomers. You're playing 3 out of the 4. You're not playing Cincinnati in 2023, but you're playing UCF at the end of the season, along with BYU and Houston there in the middle. But looking at September, so Wyoming on the road, I do think you beat them. I think this is a closer matchup, though. First game of the season, I do think the Cowboys hang in there, make it a close matchup, but you get a win. And then Oregon at home in week 2. This is a game where I actually think I could predict Texas Tech to win. I think Texas Tech being at home, they've got a really good opportunity there to pull off a nice win against the Ducks. But Oregon offensively, Bo Nix, that's a team that is going to be tough offensively next season. And I do have a few concerns defensively with some of the inexperience next season, especially at the beginning of the season. It could be a bit of a challenge there, trying to get used to the new defense, which it is going to be a different looking defense here in 2023. So I do think you lose to Oregon. I think it's going to be a close game. I think this team hangs in there, but Oregon's offense just is going to be too much in the end. So you do take a loss there. You got Tarleton State at home the next week. Easy win there. And then West Virginia on the road, you beat them as well in a close one. So you're 3-1 heading into the Houston matchup. That's definitely a big game. I think you take care of them, no problem. Now, Houston next season, I do think falls off quite a bit. Donovan Smith is a good quarterback, but he's no Clayton Tune. So I do think Houston is going to drop off quite a bit. So I'm going to take Texas Tech in an easy win there. Definitely that'd be an excellent win. Definitely a standout if you can beat Houston easily. And then Baylor on the road. I do think you drop this one, though. I think Baylor next season could be a good team. I don't see them being a big contender like they were a couple of years ago, but I do think they're going to be improved in 2023. So you take a loss there, you come back and you get a nice win against Kansas State. I think you can get multiple really nice wins at home this season. You're playing multiple really good teams at home. Kansas State, I do think you beat them in a close one. Kansas State next season, I don't think takes too many losses either. So you definitely get a signature win against them. And then BYU on the road. I do think you drop this one to BYU as well. I do think they could be decent. The Cougars, I see them right around 6 to 7 wins next season. Kenon Slovis, we'll see what they can do. So I do think you'll lose that one. I think BYU gets a close. And definitely that's going to be a tight matchup there, but I do want to take BYU. So you're 5-3 heading into November. You got TCU at home, which you get another really nice win here. TCU next season, I do think drops off quite a bit. I don't think they're going to be a big national contender again. I actually have them at 7 wins for next season. So I do have that team falling off quite a bit. I think you get a nice win there at home against them. Kansas on the road. This is another road matchup where I'm just not too certain that Texas Tech's going to win. I think Kansas gets a nice win here against Texas Tech with them being at home. And I could see the Jayhawks once again in a bowl game in 2023. They're going to be right around that 5 to 6 win range. And who knows, maybe they could get 7, be even better. They've got the talent to make a run. I don't think they'll be a big contender, but at least they could be decent for their standards. So I do think you lose to Kansas. UCF at home, this is going to be a close one. You get another nice win here. UCF next season, if any of the Big 12 newcomers will be a contender, it's going to be UCF. They're most built to win right now. I think, honestly, the worst out of the 4 newcomers might just be, well, I've got it being Houston, but it could be Cincinnati too. Cincinnati's a team that I'm pretty uncertain about. No more Luke Fickell. That's a team that also is going to be pretty young, looking forward to 2023. But then you got Texas on the road. Texas, a tough team. I do think you lose this one. So you finish out the regular season at 7-5. It is a pretty difficult schedule as well. You could definitely argue that this team has the toughest schedule in the Big 12. Obviously, having Oregon as a non-conference game does not do you any favors. You also have to play Kansas State and Texas, 2 of the top teams in the conference. You don't have to play Oklahoma. So that does help you out just a bit, but you still have to play Oregon in your non-conference schedule, plus Wyoming on the road to start the season. So it is a difficult schedule. I've got 7-5 for this team. The range, I've got the ceiling at 10-2 for this team. I do have the ceiling pretty high. I think the potential for this team is definitely up there. They could definitely be a contender in 2023, but I've got the floor at 5-7 on the flip side. So I do think the floor is definitely a bit low if this team does disappoint a bit, maybe fall from last season, but I don't really anticipate that happening. I think this team kind of hangs around where they were last season record-wise, even though this team should be better in 2023. Once again, it's just a difficult schedule that's going to be tough. I mean, you've got multiple really tough road games. Even your home slate is pretty difficult, and I've got you winning most of your home games except for the Oregon game there in week 2, which is still, I think, a winnable game. So I've got 7-5 for the prediction, but if I'm going to bet, definitely 7 to 8 wins is where I have this team. And honestly, a bowl win definitely within the picture. So this could be a 9-win team next season. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Texas Tech. It's definitely an interesting team. I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.